He has to die, Stephen. It's the only way we can be free.
I'll never forget those words that shattered my world. My daughter-in-law's voice, cold, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the hospital corridor that October night. I'd come back for my forgotten reading glasses. Instead, I found myself frozen outside my son's room, listening to the woman I'd trusted like my own daughter plot his murder. 3 years. 3 long years I'd sat beside Michael's hospital bed, holding his limp hand, praying for a miracle. 3 years of watching Ashley play the devoted wife, dabbing her eyes with tissues, whispering sweet nothings to his unconscious form. And all that time she was planning to pull the plug, cash in his life insurance, and run off with his best friend. The betrayal didn't just hurt. It burned like acid in my chest. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my heart hammering so loud I thought they'd hear it. Through the crack in the door, I watched her lean against Stephen Clark, my son's business partner, the man who'd stood as best man at their wedding. His hands were on her waist, her lips curved into a smile I'd never seen before. Predatory, hungry, nothing like the gentle mask she wore around me. "The coma's been convenient," Stephen said, with a casual cruelty that made my stomach turn. "But we can't wait forever. The company's worth $12 million now. If we wait much longer, someone might start asking questions about the transfers." Ashley laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't worry. I've been the perfect grieving wife. Even his mother thinks I'm a saint." That's when something inside me cracked wide open. Not my heart. That had already broken the night of Michael's accident. No, this was different. This was the ice on the lake finally giving way, revealing the dark, churning water beneath. I backed away slowly, carefully, my hands trembling. But here's what they didn't know. What nobody knew. I wasn't just a retired English teacher who spent her days knitting and attending church socials. I wasn't just a grieving mother too naive to see the truth. I was a woman who'd spent 40 years teaching teenagers how stories work, how villains overplay their hands, how hubris leads to downfall, how every betrayal leaves a trail of evidence if you know where to look. And more importantly, I had a very particular friend. Margaret Brewster, my college roommate, who'd spent 30 years as a detective before retiring. Margaret, who'd told me just last month over coffee, "Helen, if you ever need anything at all, I've still got connections, and I've got toys that would make the FBI jealous." Walking to my car that night, the October wind bit at my face, but I wasn't crying anymore. My hands had stopped shaking. Something cold and clear had settled into my bones, not rage, not grief, but purpose. I sat in my car and called Margaret. She answered on the second ring. "I need your help," I said quietly, my voice steady as stone. "I need cameras. I need recorders. And I need to know exactly how to use them without leaving a trace." There was a pause. Then Margaret's voice came through, sharp and knowing. "What did you find out, Helen?" "Everything," I whispered. "I found out everything." "Good," she said. "Then let's make sure they regret every single word." That night, driving home past the lake, that beautiful, deceptive lake that looked so peaceful in the moonlight, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't confront them like some hysterical old woman they could dismiss and manipulate. No, I would be cold. I would be patient. I would be absolutely, terrifyingly thorough. I would gather every text message, every bank transfer, every whispered conversation. I would document their affair, their embezzlement, their conspiracy to commit murder. I would build a case so airtight that when I finally struck, there would be no escape, no excuses, no mercy. They thought I was just a grieving mother, too gentle and too trusting to see the truth. They thought they could steal my son's life, his company, his future. And I'd simply sit there in my rocking chair, clutching my rosary, accepting their lies. They were wrong. And by the time I was done, they'd learn that hell hath no fury like a mother whose child you tried to murder. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it really began. Let me tell you about the day I stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something they never saw coming. 2 weeks after that terrible night, Michael opened his eyes. I was reading to him, Jane Austen, his favorite, when his fingers twitched in mine. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. 3 years of hoping will do that to you, make you see miracles and shadows. But then his eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, and suddenly those brown eyes, his father's eyes, were staring straight at me. I dropped the book. My hands flew to my mouth, trembling. Michael. Oh God, Michael, can you hear me? His lips moved, dry and cracked. No sound came out at first, just a desperate attempt at breath. I grabbed the water cup, held the straw to his mouth with shaking hands. He took the smallest sip, winced, then tried again. Mom, he whispered, his voice like gravel scraping against concrete. Mom, I heard everything. My heart stopped. Just stopped. What? What did you hear, sweetheart? He gripped my hand with surprising strength, his eyes suddenly fierce despite the weakness in his body. Everything, he repeated, each word costing him effort. Every single word. Ashley, Stephen, the plan, the money transfers, all of it. The hospital room tilted. I had to sit down hard in the chair beside his bed. The antiseptic smell of the room suddenly seemed overwhelming, suffocating. My son, my baby boy, had been conscious this whole time? Trapped in his own body, unable to move, unable to speak, forced to listen to his wife plot his death? How long? I managed to choke out. How long have you been aware? 6 months, Michael said, and his voice cracked with something darker than pain. Maybe longer. Time's fuzzy. But I remember. God, Mom, I remember her standing right there. He tried to point, but his arm barely moved. Right there by the window. Telling Stephen she loved him. Saying I was just dead weight. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop them anymore. For 3 years I'd cried myself dry, or so I thought. But this was a different kind of grief. Not loss, but rage mixed with the most profound relief I'd ever felt. My son was alive, truly alive, and he'd heard them too. The lawyers came last month, Michael continued, his breathing labored, but his words clear. Ashley brought them, wanted me declared legally dead, said it with this sweet voice, like she cared. His jaw clenched, and I saw tears gathering in his own eyes. She held my hand, Mom. She held my hand and talked about how much she loved me, how she wanted to honor my memory. And the whole time, shh, I said gently, wiping his tears with my thumb the way I used to when he was small. Don't strain yourself. We have time. No. His voice turned sharp, urgent. No, we don't. Mom, they're planning something. Soon. I heard Stephen on the phone 2 days ago. Said they can't wait anymore. Something about a mercy clause, a doctor's signature. My blood turned to ice. A mercy clause. They were going to have him euthanized. I leaned close, my voice dropping to a whisper, fierce with determination. Listen to me, Michael. I know. I've known for 2 weeks, and I'm already working on it. His eyes widened. You... what? I heard them, I said softly. That night, 2 weeks ago, I heard Ashley and Stephen in this very room, making their plans. And son? I squeezed his hand, feeling something cold and powerful settle between us. A shared understanding, a mutual promise. I've been gathering evidence ever since. For the first time since waking, Michael's lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd spent 6 months in hell, learning exactly who his enemies were. What do we do? He asked. I smoothed his hair back from his forehead, just like I used to do when he had nightmares as a child. But this nightmare was real, and unlike those childhood fears, this one required more than a nightlight and a lullaby. First, I said calmly, we call the neurologist. Get you properly examined. Then we keep your awakening quiet, just between us and the medical staff I trust. No one else can know yet. Not even Ashley? Michael's voice dripped with bitter irony. Especially not Ashley, I confirmed. She needs to think you're still unconscious. Still helpless. Still worth more dead than alive. Michael closed his eyes, exhausted from even this short conversation. But before he drifted off, he squeezed my hand one more time. Mom, he murmured, make them pay. I kissed his forehead, breathing in the scent of hospital soap, and underneath it, still, the faint smell of my child, my living, breathing, aware child. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered against his skin, my voice steady as stone despite the tears. I already am. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the lake. The water sparkled, innocent and beautiful in the early light. But I knew better now. I knew what lurked beneath still surfaces, and I was ready to drag it all into the light. Margaret arrived at my house 3 days later with a metal briefcase that looked like something out of a spy movie. She set it on my kitchen table with a solid thunk, then turned to me with those sharp gray eyes that had interrogated hundreds of criminals over 3 decades. Coffee first, she said matter-of-factly. Then we plan. I poured us both cups, strong and black, the way we'd drunk it back in college when we pulled all-nighters studying for exams. Funny how some things never change. The smell of fresh coffee filled my kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of the lemon polish I'd used that morning. Everything normal, everything ordinary. Except nothing was ordinary anymore. Margaret clicked open the briefcase. Inside, nestled in black foam, were devices I'd only seen in movies. Tiny cameras no bigger than shirt buttons. Voice-activated recorders thin as credit cards. Something that looked like a pen, but clearly wasn't. This is illegal, isn't it? I asked quietly, running my finger along the edge of the briefcase. Margaret looked at me with brutal honesty. Depends how you use it. Recording conversations in your own home? Legal in Wisconsin. Installing cameras in your son's hospital room where you're his medical proxy. Gray area, but defensible. Hacking into bank accounts? She paused meaningfully. That's where we'd cross the line. So we don't hack, I said firmly. We work with what we can legally obtain. Good. Margaret pulled out one of the tiny cameras, holding it up to the light. Because here's the thing about justice, Helen. It has to be cold. Calculated. If you let emotion drive this, you'll make mistakes. And mistakes mean they walk free. Her words settled over me like frost. Cold. Yes, I could do cold. Tell me what you need, Margaret continued, her voice taking on that detective tone I remembered from years ago when she'd talk about her cases. Hospital access? You've got that. Home surveillance? We can set that up today. Financial records? Michael gave me access to his accounts before the accident, I said. Emergency powers of attorney. Ashley doesn't know I can still see everything. Margaret's smile was sharp as a knife. Perfect. Then we start there. Follow the money. It always tells the truth. We spent the next hour going through everything. Margaret showed me how to hide cameras in picture frames, in the smoke detector, even in the decorative bowl on my entryway table. Each one connected wirelessly to an app on my phone. The pen recorder, she explained, demonstrating with practiced ease. Click it twice, and it's on. 48 hours of battery life. Keep it in your purse when Ashley visits. Let her talk. People always talk too much when they think they're winning. I held the pen, feeling its weight. Such a small thing, such power in something so ordinary. Now, here's the most important part, Margaret said, leaning forward with intense focus. You can't let her see any change in you. You're still the sweet, naive mother-in-law who thinks she's an angel. You smile. You thank her for her devotion. You play the role perfectly. I've been playing it for 3 years already, I said, and something bitter crept into my voice. Margaret reached across and gripped my hand hard. Helen, listen to me. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. There's a difference. Is there? I asked, meeting her eyes. She held my gaze for a long moment. Yes. Revenge is hot. It burns you from the inside out. Justice? She released my hand and sat back. Justice is ice cold. It's patient. It's proof and evidence and law. It doesn't care about feelings. It only cares about facts. I thought about Michael lying in that hospital bed, aware, listening, helpless for 6 months. I thought about Ashley's laugh echoing through the corridor. I thought about Stephen's casual cruelty. Dead weight, he'd called my son. Teach me, I said quietly. Teach me how to be cold. Margaret smiled, not kindly, but with approval. That's my girl. We worked until sunset. She showed me how to access Michael's business accounts remotely, how to screenshot documents without leaving digital fingerprints, how to organize evidence files with dates and timestamps, how to build a case the way prosecutors do, brick by brick, fact by fact, until the wall is so solid, no defense attorney can knock it down. One more thing, Margaret said, as she packed up to leave. The briefcase was lighter now, half its contents hidden throughout my house. You call me every day, every single day. I need to know you're not cracking, not making emotional decisions. I won't crack, I promised. She studied my face in the fading light, then nodded slowly. No, she agreed. I don't think you will. You know why? Why? Because you're not just a mother protecting her son anymore, Margaret said with quiet certainty. You're a woman who's seen evil wear a pretty face, and that changes you forever. After she left, I stood at my kitchen window, watching the last light fade over the lake. The water had turned dark, reflecting nothing but shadows. Margaret was right. I had changed. And Ashley? Ashley had no idea what was coming. The first crack in their partnership appeared 3 weeks into my surveillance. I was reviewing footage from the hospital room camera, the one hidden in the flower arrangement I'd brought, when I caught it. Ashley and Stephen, standing by Michael's bed, their voices low but the microphone crystal clear. You said 2 million, Ashley hissed with barely contained fury. The account only shows 1.3. Stephen's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the bedrail. Market fluctuations. You know how it works. Don't patronize me. Her voice turned venomous. I can read a balance sheet, Stephen. Where's the rest? I leaned closer to my laptop screen, my heart racing. This was it. The moment Margaret had predicted. Thieves always turn on each other eventually. Greed has no loyalty. Stephen glanced at Michael's supposedly unconscious form, then back at Ashley with cold calculation. Insurance. In case you get cold feet. In case you decide your dying husband is suddenly more valuable than our future together. The slap echoed through my speakers. Ashley's palm connected with Stephen's cheek so hard he stumbled backward. For a moment I thought she might hit him again. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels clicking violently against the linoleum floor. I sat back, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, from something else. Excitement? Satisfaction? I wasn't sure anymore, and that uncertainty frightened me. I called Margaret immediately. "They're fracturing," I told her, my voice tight. "Ashley just discovered Stephen's been skimming from their stolen funds." Margaret's response came sharp and approving. "Good. Let them destroy each other. Makes our job easier." "Margaret," I said slowly, "I need to ask you something." "Shoot." "How far can we go?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Legally, I mean. Because I was thinking, what if we anonymously tipped off the IRS about Stephen's shell company? Would that be—" "Helen, stop!" Margaret's voice cut through like a blade. "You're crossing into dangerous territory. The moment we actively interfere instead of just gathering evidence, we become part of the crime." I closed my laptop, suddenly feeling sick. The kitchen seemed too bright, too cheerful with its yellow curtains and the smell of the apple pie I'd baked that morning. Such a grandmotherly thing to do. Bake pies while plotting someone's downfall. "I'm losing myself," I whispered. "Last night I dreamed about watching Ashley get arrested. And I was smiling, Margaret. Smiling while she cried." Silence stretched between us. Then Margaret spoke with unexpected gentleness. "Helen, listen to me. You're not a monster for wanting justice. But you need to understand something. Revenge is like radiation. Even when you think you're protected, it seeps in." "I don't want revenge," I insisted, but my voice wavered. "I want justice." "Then remember the difference," Margaret said firmly. "Justice follows rules. It uses the law. It doesn't manipulate or entrap. We document what they're doing wrong. We don't create opportunities for them to do wrong just so we can catch them." Her words hit me like ice water, because that's exactly what I'd been thinking about. Setting traps, creating situations where Ashley and Stephen would incriminate themselves further. When had I started thinking like that? "I'm scared," I admitted quietly. "Not of them, of myself, of what I'm becoming." Margaret's sigh carried 30 years of police work. "Good. That fear, that's your conscience. Hold on to it. The day you stop questioning yourself is the day you've gone too far." That afternoon, I went to visit Michael. Ashley was there, of course, playing her role. She'd brought flowers, ironic, given my hidden camera, and sat by his bedside reading some inspirational book about healing and hope. I watched her from the doorway. She looked up, saw me, and her face transformed into that sweet, suffering expression I now knew was a mask. "Helen," she said with practiced warmth, rising to hug me. "I was just telling Michael about the new physical therapy research I found. Even though he can't hear us, I think it's important to stay positive." The lie tasted like ash in the air between us. He could hear. He heard everything. And so did I, through the recorder in my purse. I hugged her back, smelling her expensive perfume, something floral and cloying. "You're such a devoted wife," I told her softly, playing my part. Michael is so lucky to have you. Her smile widened, triumphant and oblivious. I love him so much. I'd do anything for him. Anything. The word echoed in my mind. Yes, Ashley. You'd do anything, including kill him. But watching her perform this charade, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even hatred. Something colder and more frightening. A kind of clinical detachment, like I was studying an insect under glass. That night, I stood at my bathroom mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in weeks. The woman staring back had new lines around her mouth. Her eyes held something hard and glittering that hadn't been there before. Justice must be cold, I whispered, repeating Margaret's words. But how cold could justice be before it froze the humanity right out of you? I didn't have an answer, and that terrified me more than anything Ashley or Stephen could do. Outside my window, storm clouds gathered over the lake. The wind picked up, sending waves crashing against the shore. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard a wire snap. Probably the old clothesline my late husband had installed years ago. The sound made me jump. Everything felt fragile suddenly, including me. The bait was simple, almost too simple. But Margaret had taught me that the best traps are the ones people walk into willingly. I invited Ashley for tea on a Tuesday afternoon. My kitchen smelled of chamomile and the lemon cake I'd baked that morning, all very grandmotherly, all very innocent. The hidden cameras were rolling. The pen recorder sat in my cardigan pocket, activated with 2 quiet clicks. Ashley arrived wearing black, as she always did lately. Mourning clothes for a husband who wasn't dead. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so grotesque. "Helen, you look tired," she said with manufactured concern, kissing my cheek. Her perfume was different today. Something sharper, more aggressive. "Are you sleeping okay?" I poured the tea with deliberately shaking hands, playing the fragile old woman. "Not really, dear. I've been thinking a lot about Michael's future, or rather..." I paused, letting my voice crack just slightly. The lack of one. Ashley's eyes sharpened, though her expression remained sympathetic. "What do you mean?" I set down the teapot, meeting her gaze with practiced sorrow. "It's been 3 years, Ashley. 3 years and no improvement. I've been talking to the doctors and they said..." I swallowed hard, as if the words hurt. "They said maybe it's time to consider other options." "Other options?" Ashley leaned forward slightly, her tea forgotten. Her pulse fluttered visibly at her throat. "End-of-life planning," I said softly, watching her face. Michael wouldn't want to live like this forever. My husband, may he rest in peace. He always said he'd never want to be kept alive by machines. Maybe Michael feels the same way. The silence that followed was electric. I could almost hear Ashley's heart racing, see the calculations spinning behind her eyes. This was it. This was what she'd been waiting for. "Helen," she said carefully, her voice dripping with false reluctance. "That's such a difficult decision. Are you sure you want to... I mean, there's still hope, isn't there?" The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I'd have believed she actually cared. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was cool, smooth, perfectly manicured. "You've been so devoted, Ashley. So loving. I know this must be hard for you to hear, but..." I paused again, letting tears gather in my eyes. Real tears, but not for the reason she thought. "I think it's time we discussed his estate. Making sure everything is handled properly. For your future." There. The hook was baited. Ashley squeezed my hand with what she probably thought was appropriate emotion. "Oh, Helen, I don't care about money. I just want what's best for Michael. Liar. The word blazed through my mind, but my face remained grief-stricken and grateful. I know, dear. But we need to be practical. I pulled a folder from the counter. Just bank statements and legal documents I'd printed. Nothing she couldn't access herself, but the gesture mattered. I've been reviewing Michael's accounts. The business, the properties, the investments. It's complicated, and I'm just a simple retired teacher. I need your help understanding it all. I watched her eyes widen slightly as she flipped through the pages, watched her fingers pause on certain numbers. The house in Madison, worth $800,000. The company shares, valued at $12 million. The life insurance policy, $2 million. This is quite substantial, she said, her voice carefully neutral, but I caught the hunger underneath, like a wolf seeing wounded prey. I want to make sure it goes to the right people, I said meaningfully. People who truly cared about Michael, who stood by him. I let that sink in, then delivered the final piece of bait. I'm meeting with my attorney next week to revise my own will. I thought maybe we could coordinate, make sure everything transfers smoothly when the time comes. Ashley looked up from the papers, her mask slipping for just a fraction of a second. I saw naked greed flash across her features before she caught herself and replaced it with tender sorrow. Helen, that's very thoughtful. But let's not rush into anything. Maybe we should wait a bit longer, see if... No, I said it firmly, surprising both of us. I can't keep doing this, Ashley. Coming to that hospital every day, watching my son waste away. It's killing me. I let my voice break completely now. I need closure. We both do. She nodded slowly, reaching across to squeeze my hand again. Of course. Whatever you need. I'm here for you. The lie sat between us like poison in a teacup. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the folder she'd pored over so hungrily. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, dust motes dancing in the light. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. But I could feel it, the trap closing, piece by piece. I called Margaret. She took the bait, I said quietly. Margaret's response came swift and satisfied. Good. Now we wait. Greed makes people sloppy. She'll move fast now, think she's running out of time. Margaret, I said, feeling that cold certainty settle deeper into my bones. I think I know what she's going to do next. What? I looked out at the lake, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. She's going to suggest pulling the plug. Soon. Maybe tomorrow. And she's going to make it sound like mercy. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then grimly, let her. Every word she says digs her grave deeper. I hung up and sat in the gathering darkness of my kitchen. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The house creaked and settled around me, full of shadows and secrets. The stage was set. The actors had their lines. All that remained was the final performance. And this time, Ashley wouldn't be the only one playing a role. Ashley called the next morning, exactly as I'd predicted. Her voice trembled with perfectly crafted emotion. Helen, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about closure, about what Michael would want. She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to let him go peacefully. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. The pen recorder was already on, capturing every word. Are you sure, dear? This is such a big decision. I know, she said, her voice breaking in all the right places. But I can't bear to see him suffer anymore. And you, Helen, you've sacrificed so much already. 3 years of your life. It's not fair to either of you. Not fair. The words almost made me laugh. What wasn't fair was my son lying helpless while his wife planned his murder. What wasn't fair was 3 years of lies wrapped in sympathy. When? I asked quietly, playing my part. The doctor said we could schedule it for next week. Friday. It'll be peaceful, Helen, just like falling asleep. Ashley's voice softened to something almost tender. We'll be there with him. Together. Saying goodbye. Friday. 5 days away. 5 days for them to think they'd won. Okay, I whispered, letting tears thicken my voice. Okay, let's do it. After I hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table for what felt like hours. Outside, snow had started falling. The first snow of the season. Fat, heavy flakes that covered everything in white. Pure, clean, deceptive. Margaret arrived within the hour, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her weeks ago. She found me still sitting there, watching the snow. Talk to me, she said firmly, pulling out a chair. She wants to kill him Friday, I said flatly. Medical euthanasia. She's already talked to the doctor, probably forged my consent forms. Margaret's jaw tightened. We've got enough evidence now, Helen. Bank transfers, recorded conversations, the shell company Stephen set up. We can go to the police today. Can we? I turned to face her, and something in my expression made her pause. Margaret, tell me honestly, will it stick? Will they actually go to prison? Or will some smart lawyer get them off on technicalities? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, with brutal honesty, conspiracy to commit murder is hard to prove when the victim is still alive. Financial fraud is easier, but with good lawyers, they might get 5 years, maybe less. 5 years. 5 years for trying to murder my son. For 3 years of lies and theft and betrayal. It wasn't enough. Helen, Margaret said carefully, reading my face, don't do anything stupid. We follow the law. That's what separates us from them. I looked at her. This woman who'd been my friend for 40 years, who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. What if the law isn't enough? Then we live with it, she said firmly. Because the alternative makes you just as bad as they are. Her words hit like a slap. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Just as bad? I'm trying to save my son's life. They're trying to end it for money. I know. Margaret's voice remained steady, infuriatingly calm. But Helen, listen to yourself. You're standing on a cliff edge right now. One more step and you fall into something you can't climb out of. I turned away, pressing my palms against the cold window glass. The snow had gotten heavier. The lake was barely visible through the white curtain. I'm so angry, I whispered. Margaret, I'm so angry I can't breathe sometimes. I look at Ashley and I want... I stopped, unable to finish. I know, Margaret said softly. But that's exactly why you need to stop. Hand everything over to the police. Let the system work. The system? I laughed bitterly. The system that would have let them declare Michael legally dead? That would have given them everything? Margaret came to stand beside me, her reflection ghostly in the window. Yes, that system. Because it's still better than vigilante justice. It's still better than becoming the monster you're hunting. We stood there in silence, watching the snow fall. I could feel it. That fork in the road Margaret was warning me about. Turn right, follow the law, accept whatever imperfect justice the courts might offer. Turn left and what? Become exactly what I despised. Finally, I nodded. Call your contact at the police department. Tell them we're ready to present everything. Margaret exhaled with visible relief. Good. That's good, Helen. You're doing the right thing. Was I? I honestly didn't know anymore. That evening, I drove to the hospital alone. Michael was awake when I arrived, his eyes finding mine immediately. We'd gotten good at silent communication over the past weeks, necessary when Ashley might walk in any moment. I sat beside his bed and took his hand. His fingers squeezed mine, weakly. Friday, I mouthed silently. They planned it for Friday. His eyes darkened with understanding. Then he squeezed my hand twice, our signal for, what now? I leaned close, my lips barely moving. We're going to the police tomorrow. All the evidence, everything. Michael's expression shifted. Relief, yes, but also something else. Doubt? Fear that it wouldn't be enough? I squeezed back. 3 times. Our code for trust me. But as I drove home through the falling snow, past the white-covered lake and the dark houses sleeping peacefully, I wondered if I trusted myself anymore. Justice had to be cold, Margaret said. But she'd never told me how cold was too cold, how far toward ice you could go before you forgot what warmth felt like. The snow kept falling, and somewhere in that white silence, I made my final decision. I would follow the law, but I would never forget what mercy they'd tried to sell as love. The night before I was supposed to meet with the police, I changed my mind. Not about turning them in, about how. I called Ashley at 9 o'clock that Thursday evening, my voice perfectly calibrated to sound broken and desperate. Can you come over? Tonight? I can't. I can't stop thinking about tomorrow, about saying goodbye. She arrived within 20 minutes, still wearing her yoga clothes, her face arranged in concerned sympathy. Helen, of course. I'm here. Whatever you need. The house was dark except for the living room. I'd set it up carefully, the TV positioned just right, the cameras recording from 3 angles, Margaret waiting in her car down the street with police on standby. This wasn't vigilante justice. This was giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Ashley sat beside me on the couch, taking my hand in both of hers. Her skin was cold, or maybe mine was. I know this is hard, she said gently, but you're being so brave. Michael would be proud. I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how I'd ever believed this mask. Ashley, I need to tell you something about Michael's estate. Her eyes sharpened despite her sympathetic expression. What about it? I've decided to donate everything, I said quietly. The house, the business, all of it, to charity, medical research for coma patients. The mask cracked, just slightly, but I saw it. What? Helen, you can't. That's not what Michael would want. How do you know what Michael would want? I asked, my voice still soft, but with an edge now. He can't tell us, can he? Ashley's grip on my hand tightened, almost painful. Helen, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Maybe we should wait. Talk to the lawyers. I already did, I lied smoothly. Signed the papers yesterday. Everything goes to the Wisconsin Medical Foundation, every penny. Her face transformed. The sweet, suffering daughter-in-law vanished, replaced by something raw and furious. You stupid old woman, she hissed, dropping my hand like it burned. Do you have any idea what you've done? I stood up slowly, my heart hammering, but my voice steady. What I should have done 3 years ago. Protect my son from you. Your son is brain dead, Ashley shouted, rising to face me. All pretense gone now, stripped away by rage and panic. He's been dead for 3 years. That shell in the hospital isn't Michael anymore. Isn't he? I asked quietly, and that's when I pressed play. The TV flickered to life. Ashley's own voice filled the room, crystal clear from months of recordings. "He has to die, Stephen. It's the only way we can be free." Her face went white as the footage continued. Scene after scene. Her and Stephen in the hospital, discussing money transfers. Her laughing about playing the devoted wife. Him calling Michael dead weight. "Turn it off," she whispered. But I stood frozen, letting it play. Then came the recordings from my kitchen, from our tea together. Her eagerness barely concealed as we discussed end-of-life planning, her eyes lighting up at the bank statements. "You recorded me?" Ashley's voice rose to a shriek. "That's illegal." "You can't." "One-party consent state," I said calmly. Every recording was made with at least one party's knowledge. Mine. She lunged for the TV, but I stepped between her and the power cord. "It's already backed up." Cloud storage. Margaret has copies. The police have copies. Ashley stumbled backward, her face contorted with rage and panic. She grabbed her phone, fingers shaking as she dialed. "Stephen?" "Stephen. She knows everything. She recorded—" Her voice cracked. "What do you mean you're at the airport?" "Stephen." I watched her world collapse with something that wasn't quite satisfaction, more like cold recognition. This was justice. Ugly, messy, but real. "He left you," I said quietly. "Probably took whatever money he could and ran." Ashley sank onto the couch, the phone sliding from her hand. For a moment, she looked almost human, lost, terrified, utterly defeated. Then she looked up at me with pure venom. "That's not even the best part," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The front door opened. Michael stood there, leaning heavily on a physical therapist's walker, his body still weak, but his eyes blazing with 3 years of suppressed rage. He'd been secretly transferred to a rehabilitation facility 2 weeks ago, recovering, preparing for this moment. "Hello, Ashley," he said, his voice rough but clear, every word deliberate. I heard everything. Ashley made a sound I'd never heard before, half scream, half sob, pure animal panic. She tried to run for the door, but Margaret was already there, stepping inside with 2 uniformed police officers. "Ashley Morgan," one officer said formally, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and attempted theft by deception." As they read her rights, Ashley turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "Please," she begged, all the pretense finally, completely gone. "Helen, please. I loved him once. I swear I did. Things just got complicated." "Save it for your lawyer," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. They let her out into the snowy night. Through the window, I watched the police car pull away, its red lights painting the white snow crimson. Michael made his way to me slowly, each step an effort. When he reached me, we just held each other, both of us shaking. "It's over," he whispered into my hair. But as the adrenaline faded and the house fell silent, I realized something strange. I'd imagined this moment for months. Victory, vindication, justice served. I'd thought I'd feel triumph. Instead, I felt nothing. Just cold, just empty, just tired. Margaret found me an hour later, standing at the kitchen window, staring at my reflection in the dark glass. "You did the right thing," she said softly. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere along the way, I'd lost something I'd never get back. The verdict came down on a Thursday in March, 4 months after that snowy night. Ashley got 15 years. Stephen, who they'd caught at O'Hare trying to board a flight to the Caymans, got 12. The judge's voice was firm and unforgiving as she read the sentences, listing their crimes with clinical precision: conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, embezzlement, forgery. I sat in the courtroom gallery, Michael beside me in his wheelchair. He'd been working with physical therapists daily, getting stronger, but recovery was slow. We held hands as the sentences were read, his fingers warm in mine. When it was over, reporters swarmed us on the courthouse steps. Their cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward like weapons. One particularly aggressive young man pushed to the front, his voice sharp with that journalist hunger for a sound bite. "Mrs. Morgan, do you believe justice has been served?" I looked at him for a long moment. Behind him, the March sky was trying to decide between winter and spring. Snow still clung to the shadows, but the air smelled of thawing earth. "Yes," I said simply, "justice has been served." "But that's not the victory here." "Then what is?" he pressed, his pen poised over his notepad. I thought about that night in my kitchen, watching Ashley's mask finally shatter, about the months of surveillance and evidence gathering, about becoming someone I barely recognized, cold, calculating, driven by something darker than I'd known existed inside me. "The victory," I said quietly, "is learning how to be warm again after justice makes you cold." The reporter looked confused, but Michael squeezed my hand. He understood. We drove home in silence, past the lake that was finally beginning to thaw. Patches of dark water showed through the ice, reflecting the uncertain sky. The sight made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. That evening, Margaret came over with a bottle of wine and a knowing smile. "You did it," she said, raising her glass. "You took them down by the book." Legal. Clean. Perfect. I clinked my glass against hers but couldn't quite match her satisfaction. "Then why don't I feel better?" Margaret studied me with those sharp detective's eyes that had seen too much and understood even more. "Because revenge, even righteous revenge, takes something from you, and now you have to figure out how to get it back." "How?" I asked, hearing the desperation in my own voice. She smiled, reaching across to pat my hand. "By living, Helen. By remembering who you were before all this. By finding joy again." Joy? The word sounded foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. 2 weeks later, I saw a flyer at the grocery store. The local community theater was holding auditions for their spring production. Something simple, a comedy about small-town life and second chances. I stood there in the cereal aisle, staring at that bright yellow paper, and felt something stir. When I was young, before marriage and children and responsibilities, I'd loved theater, had dreamed of acting, of standing on the stage and becoming someone else. Life had gotten in the way, as it does. But maybe now. I auditioned on a Tuesday. My hands shook as I read the lines, my voice cracking with nerves and disuse. The director, a woman about my age with silver hair and kind eyes, smiled at me warmly. "You've got something," she said thoughtfully. "Raw, but real. When can you start rehearsals?" Standing on that stage for the first time, I felt something crack open inside me. Not breaking, blooming, like ice finally giving way to spring water. The play opened in May. Opening night, Michael sat in the front row with his new physical therapist, Emily, a kind woman with gentle hands and a quiet laugh who'd been helping him rebuild his strength, and maybe something more than that. I'd seen the way they looked at each other. When the curtain rose and the lights hit my face, I spoke my first line. It was simple, unremarkable. Just something about planting a garden after a long winter. But my voice didn't shake. And when I said my character's name, I said it clearly, proudly. After the show, people congratulated me, told me I was wonderful. But the moment that mattered most came when Michael hugged me backstage, tears in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said hoarsely. "Not for what you did to them, for this, for finding yourself again." That night, I drove home alone through the spring darkness. The lake stretched beside the road, its surface finally free of ice. The moon reflected on the water, whole, unbroken, beautiful. I pulled over and got out, standing at the shore. The air smelled of wet earth and new grass. Somewhere in the darkness, frogs sang their ancient songs of renewal. I thought about Ashley in her prison cell, about Stephen in his, about justice served cold and hard and final, and I realized something. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired and ready to let it go, ready to live. "Justice begins in cold reason," I whispered to the night, remembering Margaret's words from so many months ago. But it has to end in warmth. I got back in my car and drove home. Inside, my house was quiet but no longer lonely. On my kitchen table sat the script for next month's production. On my mantel, a photo of Michael smiling, really smiling, for the first time since waking. This was the real victory, not the verdict, not the sentences, not even the truth revealed. The victory was this. I'd walked through ice and come out the other side still human, still capable of joy, still me. And that's what I want you to understand, sitting here listening to my story. Justice is necessary. Sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to be cold. But you can't stay cold forever. At some point, you have to thaw. You have to remember warmth. You have to forgive. Not them, but yourself. For what you became. For what you had to do. And then you have to live. Really, truly live. That's the hardest part. And the most important.